Hello all, in today's short video I will show you how to add a zoom to your player's camera using the third person character. Let's jump in. In our content drawer, we will find our third person character blueprint and open it up. We will add first a series of variables. I'll click here in the variable section. The first will be called is zoomed. This will be a Boolean. I will duplicate this. The value will be called zoom in progress. I'll create one more variable. This will be a float. I will call this zoom value underscore standard. And I will use Control D on my keyboard. And I will call this zoom value underscore zoomed. I'll right click and I will type Z. I'll type keyboard event Z, which will bring me this. So when I press the Z key on my keyboard, it will execute whatever follows here. I will create a branch by pressing B and left click on my B on my keyboard and left click with my mouse. I can also type branch, but I'll use a branch. I will drag off my value for zoom in progress. I will, if zoom is not in progress, we will set zoom in progress to true. We will then check, is the camera zoomed? And based on the result of this, we will perform a certain action on a timeline. So I will right click and say add timeline, and we'll call this lerp zoom timeline. And if we are zoomed, we're going to play from start. And if we're not zoomed, we're going to reverse from end. So I'll double click to open up this timeline. I will add a track in the top left up here. I will say add float track, and let's call this zoom lerp value. Where it says length, I'll make this a quarter second, so 0.25 second duration on this timeline. And I will right click and I'll say add key. I'll right click again, say add key. I'll select the first. I'm going to make the time 0 and the value 0. And then I will make the second value, the time as a quarter second and the value as 1. I'll select both these keys and I could either right click and make them an auto interpolation, but I like to use the one keyboard shortcut on my keyboard. So I selected those keys and pressed 1 to make these smoother interpolations. Compile, and let's go back to our event graph. Let's set the values of our zoom. So if you select your follow camera, you will see that by default, the field of view is 90. So I will set my zoom value standard to 90. This will be the sort of default value. And the zoomed value for that field of view will set to 50. Now, after the timeline on the update, what we want to do is we'll take our follow camera. We'll say set field of view. We'll drag out update into this execution pin. And I will grab this value here and I will say lerp, which is linear interpolate, which is basically moving between two values. So the alpha will be the sort of 0 to 1 value that we are moving in this timeline. So as we move along this time, the value that is on this axis will get spit out this pin and into here. And as we move from 0 to 1, we'll move from value A, which will be the 0, and value B, which will be the 1. So I'll drag my standard value into here, my zoomed value into here, my return value into here. And again, as we move along this timeline, this will drive the value from A, which is the zoomed, to B, which is the standard. So if we are zoomed, we're going to move from A to B. And if we are not zoomed, we're going to reverse from the end, and it's going to go from B to A. So after this is complete, I will set zoom in progress to false. Remember, we set it to true here. And then I will pull off of this direction, and I will say switch on E timeline direction. We'll drag this in here, and based on whether it tells us if the timeline is going forwards or backwards, we're going to set our is zoomed value to either true or false. So I'll copy and paste this. And if we are going backwards, we will say that we are zoomed, and if we're going forwards, we are not zoomed. And that corresponds with the values that we're setting here. So I'll compile, and one note is on my own follow camera, I am using an offset camera. So if the camera is directly behind, you kind of zoom into the player, but I like a sort of right side aligned camera. So on my camera boom arm, what I've done is created a socket offset. So I think by default, looks like it's 0, 0, 0. I think I set it as 100. So pulling it forward a little bit, 60 units to the right, and then 25 units up. And this is just, taste. So again, this is our logic, and let's go test it in our viewport. Compile, and I'll save. And I'll right click in here. When I press Z, we'll see that it pulls the camera in, zooming forward, giving me a little bit of, a better view. And it'll continue as I move. You'll notice that because we added some of this logic here for the zoom is in progress, it'll make it that we can't interfere by pressing Z again while the zoom is in progress. And there we go. That is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this, and leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to learn about next. Thanks all.